All right, guys, welcome into an updated look at the AP poll here as we trudge through January. And then after looking at the new updated poll, I'm going to show the KenPom, the T-Rank, and really go through some different analytical rankings because there's a big difference now that we're later in the season in terms of all of these things. But looking at the AP poll, the top three teams, Houston, I think Houston is the consensus #1 overall team. They are 17-1. They're the best offense plus defense team in the nation. They've been my #1 team since the preseason. Even after their first loss, I thought they should have stayed at #1 in front of Purdue. They moved Purdue over, and then Purdue loses to Rutgers on the road, so they go back up. Kansas at #2. You know, Kansas, the defending champions, really good team. There's a few metrics that think Kansas have gotten very lucky this year, guys. Kansas, they've gotten lucky. They're not as good as their record. They're still a very good team and a 1 seed right now. Maybe a little overrated. Purdue at 3. They're 16-1. Although it is important to note, the Big Ten, we know how crazy it's been the past few years. We've got several of the top powers that are down. The Big Ten, really no top 10 teams outside of Purdue at this point. Alabama at #4. They've been on an absolute tear. They jack up threes like crazy. It's Nate Oates' offense. It's really fun to watch. They're dealing with like an issue with a kid murdering someone. A player on their team apparently murdered someone, and he only averaged 1 point, but it's just a crazy situation. UCLA at #5. The Pac-12, it's terrible again, but UCLA, we saw them go deep a few years ago. Gonzaga, they've righted the ship. They're back up to #6. Gonzaga's done this thing the past few years where they play an incredibly hard non-conference schedule. I think this year it caught up to them. Now they're back into their conference. The West Coast, very easy, although I will say, there's some metrics that, they love St. Mary's. They love St. Mary's from the West Coast. Texas at #7, losing their head coach. We'll see with Texas. They are 15-2. The Big 12 is a gauntlet every year. Xavier at 15-3. They've had a great year from the Big East. How about Xavier now in front of UConn after all that hype that UConn did get? Tennessee losing to Kentucky on Saturday. Guys, I really like Kentucky and Calipari to make a deep March Madness run. You can almost feel it. Everyone counted them out. Everyone said they should move on from Calipari, and they get this big win. I think they're going to be a lot better. They still have legitimate talent on that roster for sure. Tennessee is a good team, but they're down to #9 after the loss. Virginia at #10. Tony Bennett, they're always a well-coached, defensive-minded team, and they actually do have good offensive efficiency this year. Arizona down to #11 from the Pac-12. Iowa State having a really nice year. They're up to #12. Kansas State at 13. There are some metrics that suggest Kansas State is a little bit lucky this season as well. TCU at 14. UConn all the way down to 15. They, were getting some hype as the #1 overall team in college basketball. They've gotten crushed. Auburn back up to 16 after a nice week. And then Miami, who I think is way overrated by the AP poll, is down to #17. Charleston at #18. How about Clemson University? I think it's a bit of an overreach here by the AP poll. I understand Clemson is 15-3. I understand they just beat Duke at home, but maybe a bit of an overreaction. This is Clemson basketball we're talking about. But they are, 15-3. The ACC this year kind of down. We thought Duke was going to be better. We thought UNC was going to be better. Marquette at #20. Love their offense. Best offense in college basketball. Baylor at 21. They're turning it on. They're playing better. They're riding the ship. Providence falls down to 22. Rutgers, they should be a top 15 team. They are an elite basketball team. They're at 23. Florida Atlantic at 16-1 from Conference USA. gets a shout out and gets ranked for the first time in, I think, ever. I think I saw they hadn't been ranked in a single poll in college basketball. And then Arkansas all the way down 10 spots to number 25 with NC State receiving the most. Guys, I think it's a real bad job by the AP poll voters. St. Mary's, I mean, I would have them inside my top 15. I wouldn't be as crazy as some of the analytics where they got St. Mary's inside their top 10. St. Mary's has got to be inside the top 15. The idea that you can put some of these teams in, like an Arkansas who's 12, and I just don't understand it. St. Mary's metrics say they should be in. Arizona State, I'm really not buying Arizona State. New Mexico, so New Mexico was ranked. They've lost some games. It's actually a relatively tough Mountain West Conference this year. There's several good teams. Illinois, they've been kind of a letdown this year. San Diego State always has a good defense, and this year I would have San Diego State inside my top 25. Michigan State, they're turning it on. That's a program I really like. They've won some really good road games. Duke gets some votes. I mean, that big loss to Clemson, you know, I would not have them ranked. Wisconsin, I think, is a total fraud. They've gotten 14 votes. Creighton, one of the most unlucky basketball teams. Even though they're 10-8, I would still rank them, honestly. I don't care. Kent State, you know, the MAC. Guys, there's so much scoring going on right now in the MAC conference. It's amazing to see. You have Boise State getting some votes, A&M, Ohio State, who's also one of the most unlucky teams, Missouri, VCU, Iowa, and UNC gets a vote as well. Let's move to the analytical rankings. I think pretty much everyone is in agreement, you know, that Houston is the #1 team. You can take a look at their rating, you know, 30.5, basically 2.5 points better than the second best team, Tennessee. And Tennessee, guys, so when you see something like this, the adjusted offensive efficiency, the adjusted defensive efficiency, if you're picking, like when you're picking a March Madness bracket, I guess I'll save it for when I do my bracketology videos, but you want a team that's good at both. So 10-3, like this Tennessee team where they're 58th on offense and they're first on defense, you want to be better on offense. UCLA at #3, Bama at #4. I mean, Bama's had one of the toughest schedules in the country, and they're still really good. Purdue at 5, UConn 6, Kansas at #7. So this is where really the luck metric comes into play. I mean, Kansas has been extremely lucky this year. They're 19th overall out of like 360 programs in terms of luck. And that's just basically getting lucky that teams are missing threes and stuff like that, which does play. Guys, let's be honest. When it comes to college basketball, if you're facing a team that normally shoots like 38% from 3, and when you face them, they shoot 16%, yeah, sure, maybe you did a few things to adjust, you know, you got their hand in the face, you played good defense, but a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is teams having bad nights, and Kansas, they've gotten a lot of close wins. They've gotten teams that have had really bad shooting nights. That's why their luck metric is so good. I said St. Mary's, man, it's crazy. I think St. Mary's is a top 15 team. I don't know how they're not ranked. It's amazing. Texas at #9. Gonzaga at 10. Marquette, they've got a great offense, not a good defense. Virginia, Iowa State, Rutgers at 14. Really good, unbelievable defense. I think Rutgers has the best defense in college basketball. Xavier at 15. They're very solid. Baylor at 16. There's Ohio State. You can see Ohio State in terms of the luck metric. I mean, basically the most unlucky team in college basketball along with Creighton. And again, that has to be taken into account when ranking these teams. It's like, oh, they're 10-7. No, I mean, they're actually better than that. They've gotten very unlucky. They've had 2 overtime losses. But yeah, I know a lot of people are angry at, you know, what's going on with Ohio State and Creighton right now. Auburn at 19. Wow, they have Arizona all the way down at 20. Arkansas at 21, UNC at 22, Illinois inside the top 25, West Virginia and TCU, and then trying to find some of the teams that are ranked. I mean, there's FAU at 40. They've got them ranked inside of their top 25. Who was the other team that I did not agree with? Oh, Clemson. Where's Clemson at? Clemson's at 54. Yeah, you know, some of these are just not... I would not agree. I understand Clemson is 15-3, and that's phenomenal. That's great. But in terms of ranking them, I don't know about that. And then, like, Miami's 39th. Yeah, I don't know what their obsession is with Miami. I guess because they're 14-3. Guys, Penn State is really good. I like Penn State basketball. They're a lot better than people think. And then the bracket matrix, I'll obviously look at this more when, with the bracketology videos and my 3.0 that's coming out soon. Yeah, I mean, Kansas is going to be a 1 seed right now. Purdue is going to be a 1 seed. To me, there's a consensus top 4, and this is going to change. But right now, I think it's very obvious those are the top 4 teams, and I don't think it's close. So right now, the 1 seeds I'd say Houston, the number 1 overall seed, Kansas, the number 2 overall seed, Purdue, the number 3 overall seed. And then Alabama, the 4th 1 seed, the number 4 overall seed. And then the 2 seeds, I think UConn gets knocked down. Tennessee, probably a fringe 2. UCLA is probably the number 1, 2 seed. Arizona's kind of fringe. They don't have good metrics. Gonzaga's probably a fringe 2 or a 3. Texas is probably a 2 at this point. Kansas State is probably a 4. Xavier's probably a 3. Virginia's probably a 3. Iowa State's probably a 4. Miami's probably a 5, I would say. Marquette's probably a 4 or 5. Arkansas is probably a 4 or 5. Duke is probably a 6 at this point, maybe a 5 depending. TCU's probably a 5, maybe a 4. Baylor's probably a 4, I would say, maybe a 5. San Diego State's probably a 6. Providence is probably a 6. Auburn's probably a 5. Rutgers is probably a 5. I'd probably say St. Mary's is probably a 4 or 5, but right now I'd say 5. Ohio State's probably a 7 because they're 10-7. UNC probably a 7. Illinois, probably a 6. Missouri, probably a 7 or 8. Wisconsin, probably an 8. MSU, probably an 8. NC State, probably a 6 or a 7. Indiana, probably an 8. Maryland, probably a 10. West Virginia, probably a 9. FAU, probably a 9. And then those are just some other ones right there. And then, like, Charleston. I mean, I wonder what they'll do with Charleston. Because, we're not used to seeing teams like Charleston ranked. Kent State, but especially Charleston, because they're a top 20 team right now. They have 1 loss. Could they be like a top 6 or 5 seed? I think they could be. I don't know how they're a 12 here. I think it's because they're the auto bid, maybe. But you guys can see the best teams in the lower tier conference. Iona just had a miserable loss in the Metro. Horrible loss. Dayton. The A-10 is terrible this year. I thought St. Louis was going to be better. They're not. Kent State, the MAC has crazy scoring on offense. Oral Roberts is a team. They play a ton of higher scoring games. But that's just kind of the update on all the 16 teams. The 16 seeds this year are brutal. A&M, Corpus Christi, Southern, Eastern Washington, Wisconsin, Milwaukee. All right, Norfolk State, I'm used to them. All of these other teams are brutal, but again, they're going to have to win their conferences. I guess they're just the favorites. It's an auto bid. Penn State is the first team out. Oklahoma, second team out. Nevada. Kentucky's going to make it. I expect they're going to make it for sure. I'm guessing Kentucky's probably going to be like a 6 or a 5 seed. That's because they're going to turn it on after that upset win. Yeah, you've got UCF, Utah State. They had a nice little run. Utah had some good metrics earlier, but that's about all I'm going to get into when it comes to the matrix at this point. And yeah, so that's just kind of an update on where everything stands in terms of the rankings. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.